Hello, successful people.
Welcome back to the Iron Fire Success Channel. I'm DK.
And I'm Mo.
Thank you so much to our subscribers.
And if you're new to our channel, welcome. In today's video, I'm going to show you the cabinet hardware jig that I use to install our cabinet hardware. I'm going to show you how to actually assemble this jig, how to set it up for the hardware, and then I'm going to show you how to install the hardware on the cabinets.
All right, stick with us.
I thought it might be helpful to share all of the tools that I'm using for this project. Starting from the top, I like cleaning up as I go, so I'm using this nifty little vacuum cleaner. To the left at the top, I have a power screwdriver, and to the right, I have my power drill with a 3/16 drill bit. I'm using a screwdriver that's a ratchet style screwdriver. Of course, my cabinet hardware jig, and I have safety goggles, a pair of pliers, a pencil, a C clamp, which is the red thing you see there. It looks like a backward C, and I have my tape measure. Now let's get into assembling the actual cabinet hardware tool. So when you receive this, it's not going to be assembled, so you're going to have to assemble it yourself. So the first thing we do here is slide this here, and what I'm trying to do is get that right in the middle. As you can see, there's numbers on this side and numbers on this side. We want to have it centered here where there's an equal amount of inches on each side. Next, we want to assemble this piece, which will determine the height of our hardware, or how far up, how far in, or how far out, depending on how we're using it. And we just want to make sure these screws are nice and tight and that nothing is wiggling around there. And then we will place one of these to the left, and then the other one to the right.
That's the other left and the other right.
Okay, and we're going to use this a little bit later when we install the cabinet hardware, but this also slides on here like so. And now that we have our cabinet hardware jig, our cabinet hardware tool assembled, now we're ready to actually prepare to install our cabinet hardware. Now, the first thing we want to do is actually measure our drawers. If we're doing drawer installation, we want to measure our drawers. So here, this drawer is actually 14 inches, well, a little more than 14 inches. So I have 14 inches, and I have this measurement technique just to make it a little bit easier, where I just count the tick lines here. So we have 14 inches and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines. So to make the math easier, I'll take half of 14 and half of the number of little lines that I have here. I'm going to turn this around to make it a little easier to see. So half of 14 and half of the 10 lines. So half of 14 is 7, and then I count 5 of these little lines here. I don't know what kind of measuring tool you're using, but if you're using one that's measuring like this or similar to this, you can use the same technique. So half of 14 is 7, and then half of the 10 lines is 5. So I find 7, which is here, and then I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. And as you can see, I have a little mark right there to mark off where the center of my drawer is.
Okay.
Now that I have the center of my drawer, We're going to pause just for a moment because now I need to set my cabinet hardware jig up for the actual cabinet hardware. And the way that I do that is I need to have the center of these holes to the left and to the right centered on where the screws would go into the actual cabinet hardware.
How do you find the center point if you don't already know that?
The way I find the center is I put the cabinet hardware about center of the jig, of the cabinet hardware jig. And then since this tool actually has, see these little numbers here?
Okay, on the bottom, gotcha.
I want to make sure that each of these holes, see how they'll have the lines here, is equal distant from the 0 mark.
Okay.
So from the center. And
I see, you're just lining it up with the middle of where the screw goes in the handle itself.
correct, yes. So this one is a little off. So I do it here, and it may take a couple of adjustments to get it. But if you see that line, that plus, I don't know if you can see that on camera.
Yes, you can.
But that plus lets me know, the line coming down lets me know. So I'm lining this up with that line at the center of the screw hole, not on the edges. So I try to get that as close to center as possible. For this particular cabinet pull, it is the 64 mark. So that's 60, and then right in between the 60 and 70 is a little longer mark, that's 65. But this is one less than that, and I get it at 64 on each side.
Okay.
This way I know my cabinet pull is actually centered on the tool.
Gotcha, thank you.
Okay. All right. So now that we have our cabinet tool set up, now we're actually ready to install the cabinet hardware. Well, drill the holes to install our cabinet hardware. Remember my little tick mark that I made here on the drawer?
Okay.
On the top of the cabinet hardware tool, I don't know if you can see, there's a little line.
Let's see. Oh, I see that
See
line
that
right
line?
there. Yep.
So I want to actually line that line up with the mark that I made here on the drawer.
Okay.
Are you able to see it?
Yes, I could see
Great.
that.
Okay.
I'm going to zoom in a little bit to see that it's lined up.
Now, here is a tip. I'm using this C-clamp to brace the cabinet hardware in place so that I don't have to hold it with my hand during the drill. It's like I slid it a little bit. I'm gonna put it back in place.
So what you can see of the line on this side, you could barely see it on this side right here. Can you see it in the front or somewhere? Because I don't see the line anymore.
Okay, let me move my hand and then you'll probably be able to see it. Let me tighten up my jig here a little bit.
Is it that little white mark?
It's the little white mark. It looks
Okay,
almost
now
like
I can
a
see
chip, but it's actually the line
Okay.
up here.
Okay,
the
got
center.
it.
So it's running down the front of the tool, and just a little bit is on the top. So now, as you can see, I've braced my cabinet hardware tool in place, and now I'm actually ready to drill.
I have a
my cabinet
question.
house. Sure.
How did you know how far down that should go? Like how much space from the top of the drawer should you place your cabinet pulls?
Great question. Great question. So what I did was I actually measured. I'm glad you brought that up. I actually measured, and this drawer is 6.5 inches.
Okay.
I am putting this at about 3 inches. So
3 inches from the top?
3
or the
inches
bottom?
from the top.
From the top, okay.
And the other thing is on cabinets that are, or drawers that are lower, particularly on our island, because we have pot drawers. Dee wanted the cabinet hardware to be a little higher so she didn't have to bend down as far. So some of this can be based on looks, where you want it to go, and then if you want it perfectly centered as we're doing here, then you measure and then you do the center of your measurement using the same technique that we used on the top.
Okay.
Now this is what controls the depth. So if I do this, then I can slide this as far down or as far up as I want it.
Okay. And you
Now,
set it to 3 inches.
I set it to a little more than 3, 6.5. So I set it to about 6 1/4.
3 1/4?
3 1/4, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. What would I do without you?
I don't know. Luckily, you'll never have to find out.
True that. All right, so here we go. Okay, so I've realigned my cabinet hardware tool, and now I'm ready to actually drill. And
You got your fingers so close to that?
it's out of the way of the drill. It's not going to hit my finger, but just for so that I can stabilize the drawer, keep it from going in and out, I'm going to erase it with my hand.
Gotcha.
Now, make sure your hand is clear of where the hole is going to be on the inside. I should also point out that the outside of this drawer is a softer wood than the inner lining. So
Wait, the inner lining, what are you talking about?
So this is the actual face of
Trying to get this. Oh, okay,
actual face of the cabinet. This is a softer wood than the inner lining. So
Gotcha. That's this part right here.
correct.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're ready to actually drill. And again, since the outer piece is softer than the inner, once I know that I've gotten through the outer piece, I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on my drill to get through the harder wood. Let's do it. Put my drill in reverse and gently pull back. Now let's do the other side. Again, make sure my drill is going clockwise to go in. And the neat thing about this cabinet hardware jig is that these holes act as a guide. So they lead you straight through as long as you don't tilt the drill too much. Easier. I'll remove my C-clamp, remove my jig, and as you can see, all right, I'm going to clean up the holes a little bit. So on the inside, there are little pieces of wood in here. I just kind of break them away.
See if I can see that.
Is actually using the vacuum to rub over these to pull away some of the splinters. Okay, since there's a lining in here, my screws have to be able to reach all the way through the lining and out through the other side. Now these screws are actually a little too long, so that if I try to install them with this length of screw, they will not go on. Well, they won't tighten all the way to the cabinet drawer. So I'm going to have to actually snip these. And if you look closely, there are little break points in the screw. So what I'm going to do is I take a pair of pliers. Now you may actually have something else to snip the screw with, but my technique is to actually put the pliers in the gap, one of those breaks, and then clamp it, and then I'm going to actually pull. And it broke at the second point, and now my screw is ready for the hardware installation. It looks a little stubby on this side, but it will go through to my cabinet hardware just right. It'll be nice and tight. Do the same thing here with this one. Break that. It broke in the same spot. And now both my screws are ready. Take my cabinet hardware. And slowly just get the thread started on both sides. Where's that screw hole? There we are. So I want to push the hardware flush to the cabinet and then just let the screws pull it tight. And this is a ratchet style screwdriver, which means that it tightens going this way and then it's free, kind of like a 10-speed bike, backpedaling.
We know how old you are. Now the 10-speed.
And I'll do the same thing here. And
oh, look at that.
hardware is installed.
And you repeat the same thing for the cabinet doors below?
Well, the cabinet door technique is similar, but a little bit different. So I've got to make some adjustments to my cabinet hardware jig, because if I did this, of course, that's way too far. Now, what I've done to speed up the process a little bit, and this is another tip, I pre-marked where my other cabinet hardware is so that I can quickly go back to that measurement.
So that's for the doors.
This is for the cabinet, yeah, the actual doors, the cabinets.
So you
And I have a marker for the drawers too, but the key is that it has to be drawers that are about the same size, or where you want all of your cabinet hardware to drop down to the same level.
Okay.
One other tip about this jig is that you want to constantly, you see me constantly checking just to make sure that these are tight, because sometimes during drill it can loosen up a little bit. It's metal on metal. If you drop it, you may have to readjust it. If you bump it up against something, you may have to readjust it. So you want to constantly check. The other thing is periodically, just to make sure that your measurements have not moved, or sometimes some of your cabinet hardware may be slightly different, especially if you're using cabinet hardware that may look the same, but from different manufacturers, the center hole may be slightly different. So I do this periodically. I just put it up against it just to make sure it's center, and we're looking good here. So I'm going to continue with the install on the cabinet. This is where this little piece comes in. So I'm going to slide this here to control the vertical adjustment of the hardware on the cabinet. And for our cabinets here, I just happen to know because I wrote it down. For our other cabinet hardware, the measurement is 120. So the top of this I put at
120.
120.
How would a person find that out if they didn't already know that?
Okay, so that is a matter of eyeballing it and measurement as well. Now, with us, a lot of it was just eyeballing to see where we actually wanted to place the hardware, where would it actually look best. And then we kind of played around with the height. And once I figured that out, I had this on here and I just tightened it up. But if you measure as well, for instance, I know the measurement from this side to here.
Do that again, the measurement from left to right?
The measurement from left to right.
Okay.
And what I did was I centered our hardware on our cabinets based on that, which is where I got this measurement from for this line.
Okay.
And again, a lot of it with this is, for your cabinets, is just eyeballing where you actually want it to be and what looks good for you. So I'm actually holding the cabinet hardware jig, making sure that this is flush against this, and that this is actually sitting up here. So now, even if I didn't have the C-clamp on here, this would give me equidistant on all of my cabinet hardware, all of my cabinets. So now that I have this in place and it's braced, I'm going to do the same thing here. Making sure that my fingers behind here are clear. This has no backing on it, so it's pretty soft. I'll be able to get through this pretty fast. And now for this one, and no, D, it's not going to hit my thumb. I got it nice and flat there.
Alrighty.
And bracing it.
And you're reversing the drill when you pull it backwards through the hole, right?
Yes, same technique we use on the drawers. I'm clockwise going in and reversing.
Counterclockwise.
And counterclockwise coming out. So I'm
Gotcha.
clicking this button on my drill.
Gotcha.
And I do recommend, if you're putting on a lot of hardware, using a power screwdriver. Just don't have the setting really high. And now, because this isn't as thick, I can use these screws.
Oh, okay. Was it the same
Just
screw?
shorter. No.
No.
This screw requires no snipping. With our cabinet hardware, there's a little set. So they provided.
Oh, I see. So you had two choices of screws. We'll put what this cabinet hardware is in the description box, along with the cabinet hardware jig you used as well.
In the same methodology. Now here, I'm just going to get it started in one, just enough. I'm turning it just enough to get it started. And then, because what I want to do is get this one as close to the wood as possible so that it'll be nice and level and even. So then I'll push the hardware all the way against the cabinet at the top and the bottom. And then tighten the top, but not all the way, just in case I need a little play at the bottom. I'll get them nice and close, and then I tighten them all the way up. Nice and tight. And you don't want to over tighten, just once you feel the resistance, it's pretty strong.
Okay, let's get a look at this drawer in the kitchen as well as the kitchen cabinet. This was a big savings for us, and most people do skip getting hardware through the builder when you do a new construction home because it's so expensive. However, the side effect of that is you then either have to pay somebody to do it or you have to do it yourself. Like we haven't done this before, but it worked out fine. And in the case of a small mistake, we'll put up a short video or pictures to show you how Mo just easily fixed that. So you can't even tell that it was a mistake. So don't be afraid to try it if you haven't done it before.
So during the process of installing our cabinet hardware, I made a mistake. I didn't double check the jig and I drilled holes too low. So one side of the cabinet is higher than the other. But mistakes do happen, but there's always a remedy. So I'm going to show you what I did. So here I took some wood filler and I filled these holes. So initially I drilled the hole here, and over here I drilled one here and here. I took some wood filler, put it there, filled it here, had to press, and I continued to press until it came all the way through, and I got this little notch on this side. And now I'm going to let it dry. I'll sand it down and I'll show you the rest of the process later in the video. Okay, so my method is a little unorthodox, but what I have here is a piece of wet paper towel. I'll wipe it over this, and since this wood filler is soft, I'm kind of using my fingernail to get rid of the excess around the hole. And since this is bulging a little more, I can't get it with my nail. I have just a little piece of sandpaper. And I'm going to put it on top, and I'm just twisting it gently because I don't want to scratch up the paint. I'm trying to keep it isolated, so I'm just working it down slowly until it looks like this.
Wait, let me see the other one. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's pretty flat.
And now all I have to do is touch it up with the paint, and we'll show you what it looks like once we're done. Okay, so now that we have the wood filled in, now we're ready to paint. As you see, I got my paint here, and I'm just touching it up with a little bit of paint where the holes are.
Can't even see this one. Oh,
As you can see, blending it in. You can barely see it, but when it dries, it should blend right in.
Any advice, Mo, to anybody that's getting ready to do this themselves at home?
Just don't be afraid. Try it. Watch the video over and over again, and you can do it.
That's right. Thanks so much for joining us today.
We hope that this video makes it easier for you to install your cabinet hardware.
Subscribe for more DIY videos and more house-to-home videos, and we will start doing model home tours again shortly.
And as always, until next time, be peaceful, stay prayerful, and count your blessings.